Okay everybody, Texelar here again with the 17th episode of the Heroes Appendix video series. Its purpose is to help newer and veteran players alike to fully understand the ins and outs of all the characters in Hero Wars Mobile. In today's video, we are reviewing the second place winner of the most recent vote amongst my patrons, and the most oppressive damage dealer currently in Hero Wars Mobile, and is the only unit in the current meta who, surprisingly, partners best with other damage dealers rather than just a team of supports. Daredevil. She was reworked in February of 2020 and took the meta by storm, and surprisingly, not that many people have her built still. How soon will you join the Daredevil hype train and reap the benefits? Maybe today. In today's video, we are going to be discussing her skills, how they visually appear, and their uses both practically and strategically, when to use Daredevil, when not to use her, her roles in the team, skin priority order, artifact priority order, glyph stat priority order. First up is Daredevil's activatable skill, Rapid Fire, which is commonly referred to as her ultimate because this is the ability she can use once her yellow energy gauge is filled during battle. Daredevil will grow in size and do a backflip into the air, hovering there for a few seconds, gritting her teeth and turning her handguns temporarily into little machine guns, shooting 5 shots in rapid succession, each shot dealing 25% more damage than the previous one. This skill has a modest damage ratio at 55% physical attack, plus 3000, which scales really well since she has a physical attack buff artifact weapon, as well as many of her compatible allies. A note to make is this skill's 25% increase scales additively, which means it scales a fixed amount based on Daredevil's physical attack at the time the skill is used. So, if she has 100 damage on the first hit, it will hit for 100, then 125, then 150, then 175, then 200. If it's scaled multiplicatively, it would mean the damage would grow from 100 to 125 to 156 to 195 to 244. Never fear though, Daredevil's physical attack dramatically scales throughout the course of the battle, as will be discussed with her later skills. Daredevil's second skill is called Big Bada Boom. Daredevil will thrust her butt backwards into the air, knocking the bomb bearing a skull and crossbones in her satchel to the ground, grinning ear to ear before kicking it to the center of the enemy team, dealing guaranteed critical damage to all of the enemy's team near the explosion. This skill has a low 25% physical attack ratio plus 5400. The damage on this is low, but it will typically hit all 5 members, and it may be more if there are pets, clones, or summons in play on the battlefield. Plus, it has a special synergy with Daredevil's passive skill, which we will discuss in that skills section. This skill can be used once every 12.5 seconds. For such an amazingly useful skill, this cooldown is more than reasonable. It's enough to keep enemies glad that it isn't any shorter, and Daredevil players happy it isn't any longer. Daredevil's third skill is called Fire Support. Daredevil will perform an extra basic attack after an ally standing behind Daredevil does their basic attack. From Daredevil's rework, this was her bread and butter skill that was the most anticipated, and is currently what you want to focus on when you select the team that you put her in. A note with this is that contrary to the skill's description, it does not use it when your ally attacks. It only triggers when the ally behind Daredevil deals damage. Now, why is that important to know? If your ally does not deal any damage as a result of a dodge or hitting Lucas, which is Astrid's pet, or some other situation that might cause you to deal 0 damage, like Alvinor blocking it, then it will not trigger the skill for Daredevil. Another note with this skill is that she is unable to complete an additional basic attack if she's already in the middle of another attack animation, which is her first or second skill, if she's stunned or knocked up, etc. And a final note with this skill is since she's using her basic attack so many times, she still gains 10% energy for each additional attack from this skill, which means she uses her ultimate quite often. Daredevil's passive skill is called Thirst for Blood, and it is linked to every other skill she has and even her basic attack. Each critical hit that Daredevil deals increases her physical attack by 3% plus 600, which comes out to 1994 when she's maxed. This effect lasts until the end of battle and can be stacked an unlimited amount of times. A note with this skill is that it increases additively, similar to the scaling of her first skill, except this skill is not affected by artifact weapon bonuses or nebula, so whatever amount it says in the skill description is how much extra damage you will get for every critical hit. Another note is when considering her second skill that potentially hits the entire enemy team, when it deals critical damage, each individual enemy hit on the other team will be a separate instance of damage increase. So what that means is if it hits 5 enemies each time it's used, she will get an additional 9,970 physical attack for each use of this skill at the maximum level. This skill adds up very quickly, as Daredevil has the highest critical hit chance in the game out of any hero, and when she also attacks more frequently than any other hero, that is a deadly combination paired with the mechanics of this skill. Let's take a deeper look now and see when you should be using Daredevil. There are really 3 main builds you will want to leverage with Daredevil, and you have a reasonable amount of flexibility with the other units you can bring with her beyond those, so let's discuss those variations now. First up is Sebastian, Daredevil, and Darkstar. The reason this is so effective is because since Daredevil has a really high crit chance, but not a lot of armor penetration, which hits 3,190 when it's maxed, she's going to have a difficult time getting through heavily armored enemies, which the frontmost unit in enemy teams will likely be. Sebastian has a physical attack artifact weapon, and he also assists her with cutting through tanks because he enables her to deal pure damage with every critical hit. And since she can land critical hits more often than any other hero, as you could imagine, even through artifact weapon buffs, Daredevil is able to cut through tanks very quickly if she lands continuous critical hits. Cue Darkstar. Darkstar's passive skill says that every basic attack, she actually shoots 2 basic attacks at once, and both of these hits can trigger Daredevil's fire support skill. So this gives you the freedom to have fewer heroes behind Daredevil, but also get the benefits of having more heroes standing behind her. Darkstar also has a physical attack artifact weapon, pushes the enemy front line to the center of their team, exposing weaker armored enemies. That all sounds pretty great, right? It's because it is. You can fill in almost any tank, even using Anvari to tank because the damage output on the team is so high. You can typically end most fights before Anvari will be in any real danger, leaving Jet or Dorian for position 5, which Jet grants Darkstar every arrow the chance to crit, as well as your tank, so the damage output goes significantly higher than even the famous Kira Blender team. Or Dorian, who offers Darkstar and Daredevil both his aura, so while they're dealing massive damage, they're also healing for a massive amount, ensuring they cannot be chipped down. This version is the most free-to-play friendly. Second up is Elmir, Daredevil, and Darkstar. Elmir is an amazing teammate for Daredevil because he grants her everything that she's missing in life. He offers her armor penetration, which is up to 32,040 when maxed on his artifact weapon, and once he leaps to the back with his ultimate, he summons 2 to 4 clones, and Elmir himself, plus his 2 to 4 clones, can all trigger Daredevil's fire support skill because they all deal ranged basic attacks. Daredevil's damage typically scales out of control, but you don't get to see the full effects of it because she's unable to get through the tank's armor. However, with the armor penetration, you will start seeing enemy tank and oftentimes the rest of the enemy team die within just a few seconds. The Darkstar synergy from before still applies, and with Elmire on the team, both Jet and Dorian are still viable 5th units, although Dorian is the safer of the two because when Elmire jumps back, all 3 units bask in his aura. However, in this instance, you cannot use Andvari to tank because Elmire stands in front of Andvari, so you will need to substitute him for a real tank who protects Elmire. Astaroth, Ziri, Luther, or Cleaver are great choices. The only real risk with this team is it's entirely reliant on Elmire using his ultimate ability, and he's in a risky position and may die sometimes without using it. This can also be the most resource intensive of the 3 and is not recommended for free-to-play players. Lastly, we have Elmire, Sebastian, and Daredevil. This team is a little slower to build up damage, but oh boy, once Elmire uses his ultimate, there's not a tank or group of tanks that can stand up to the level of pressure that she's going to be dishing out. You're going to have the numerous additional attacks from the clones, but also the bonus pure damage from Sebastian, and you will have fights where Daredevil can crit 7 or more times in less than 2 seconds, effectively dealing over 1 million damage in 2 seconds when she's fully built. Luckily, her damage scales at every level, so you will see her effectiveness whenever you choose to use her. Even if she's not dishing out millions of damage early on, you will definitely see results relatively early. You can utilize almost any tank there is, but I recommend Astaroth for the extra life for Elmire to make sure he uses his ultimate, or Rufus to ensure there's less risk of them losing to a team of mages. And then lastly, something to consider is that she's an amazingly good counter to teams like Satori, Kark, or even most teams that are clearly just trying to stall you out. Undead teams, and she can even beat the Kira Blunder team in a head-to-head at endgame, because she deals more damage and deals it faster than even Kira does. Now we'll take a look at when you should be avoiding Daredevil in your team. The first up is in position 4 if she doesn't have Elmire on the team, or in position 5. Daredevil's main strength is being a literal machine gun of non-stop bullets hailing down on the enemies, so why would you want to take that away from her? The second time to consider avoiding Daredevil is against Helios and Orion with 2 tanks that have at least 640,000 health or more in front of them. A side note for endgame players is most people don't realize that while Helios plus Orion is a formidable opponent, she can still beat them sometimes if she crits fast enough. If Helios does not have Orion with him, though, he will not do much damage to Daredevil because she can reach almost 8,000 magic defense and has 245,000 health. So if you see Helios without Orion, you can put her next to Dorian and not have anything to fear about Helios' crits because she will stop herself from attacking too often by getting stunned by his counterattack and then fully heal from Dorian once the effect wears off. The third time to consider avoiding her is against a Twins team. While she's not likely to win, she still certainly can. I only list it here because it's more of a gamble than a sure thing to win, only because it's completely reliant on how many crits she gets early on. With it basically within the first 2 sets of basic attacks before Lars gets his ult off, you will basically know if you've killed Krista at that point, then you're going to win. If you didn't, then you're going to lose. The next time to consider avoiding Daredevil is against Aurora and Dante teams, or just Aurora in general. She has that chance to dodge and eliminate your fire support skill, which is almost assuredly the reason why you're using Daredevil. Lastly is against Ziri and any armor penetration artifact weapon hero. If you recall from the Ziri video, we talked about how Ziri reflects unmitigated damage, even if she mitigates it, back to the attacker, and Daredevil's damage is scaling like crazy throughout the fight. So if Ziri basically returns all of Daredevil's attacks back to her and pierces all of Daredevil's armor, she's gonna kill your Daredevil in one hit if you don't manage to get through her first. Now we'll briefly discuss her role in the team. Daredevil's role is marksman, which just means range damage dealer. Daredevil will also be your main damage dealer, and the centerpiece for your team construction, and every little detail about your team will revolve almost entirely around her. You can stick her in other lineups and situations other than what I mentioned previously, but you will not see anywhere near the results you will if you follow the teams I suggested. In this segment, we'll be discussing her skins, which are all available for purchase using skin scrolls. The top priority skin is her Rowdy skin, which offers 2,960 critical hit chance, which is the largest boost to her damage potential because it can scale infinitely throughout the course of the battle as long as she's landing more critical hits. The second in priority is her Romantic skin, which offers 106,645 health, and while it may seem counterintuitive, more than anything you want her surviving hits, since if she falls in battle, your efforts likely will as well. And the third in priority is her default skin, which offers her 1,365 armor and 4,095 physical attack, and is going to help you reach those high numbers for damage and ensure her attacks don't get dodged. Next, we'll discuss artifact priority, which means which artifact is the most important to level up first. First up is her book, which grants her 2,967 critical hit chance and 3,561 physical attack, and which offers her the largest single source of damage output in the game. Something to consider is you can stop this artifact at 5-star to prioritize the next artifact to 6-star before this one. The second in priority is the artifact Weapon, On and Off, which will grant her and her allies up to 21,357 physical attack for 9 seconds when she uses the ultimate ability. As mentioned under her fire support skill, she's in the unique position that she will utilize her ultimate more frequently than most of your other heroes, so boosting this will not only benefit her, but all of your allies as well. And then the last in priority is her artifact Ring. This grants her 11,970 physical attack and 3,990 armor. This is roughly 20% of her total damage, and while it is very important, it can be made up for by landing more critical hits in battle. So this worked its way to the bottom of the list, although it is still very important. In our final segment, we'll be discussing glyph stat priority. The first glyph in priority is Critical Hit Chance, which gives 1,120 critical hit chance and offers her the largest boost to her damage. Second glyph to choose is Magic Defense, which offers 3,360 magic defense and is a whopping 42% of her total magic defense, which is incredibly high while leveling, and helps shut down heroes like Jorgen and Faceless who might otherwise deal a lot of damage to you. The third glyph is Health. It gives 30,800 health. Just like the health skin, this is relatively high priority and ensures she's able to keep fighting longer. The fourth glyph is Physical Attack, which grants 2,240 physical attack, and while surprising for a damage dealer to have it lower in priority, she builds damage pretty quickly in the middle of the battle, so the longer it goes and the longer she survives, the more devastating she can become. The last glyph to choose is her Agility, which adds 560 armor and 1,680 physical attack. This will contribute more to her dodge penetration and damage to polish her off, and while low in priority for her, it is not a low priority in general. Okay everybody, hopefully you found this video informative. If you do, please like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. Another thing to consider is recommending my content to your friends as well if you know they yearn for a knowledge of the game. Since these videos are private, word of mouth is how they will get spread. Also, for a large and active Hero Wars mobile community, join my Facebook group called Hero Wars Mobile Community The GOAT. The link will be in the video's description. Thanks for watching.